What's the craziest detail of lore you've put in one of your games or seen another DM put in theirs? In the capital city, one of the members of the council had a demon horn hanging from her belt like a trophy. In a nearby smaller city, a magic store was owned by a tiefling man who was missing a horn. The remaining one looked very familiar. The party put two and two together and asked the tiefling why the councilwoman had his horn. "Oh, I see you've met my ex-wife. A player once used to always bring a packed lunch to sessions and they always had a green apple because they had a phobia of red ones, I think from watching Sleeping Beauty as a child. I added it into the world lore that there were no red apples anywhere on the continent, but there was another continent where only red apples grew. If the group weren't taking a campaign seriously enough, I'd threaten to send them to the Red Apple continent, and that player would bring them back in line pronto." I had someone point out that a certain prominent family of NPCs shared their last name with a real-world popular brand of butter, so clearly had butter powers. Every member of the family they've encountered since has been carrying a grease scroll, as is tradition since beloved great-great-grandpa Philinus met his tragic untimely death when a door with rusted hinges wouldn't open. This was a detail/plot twist I was completely mind-blown about that my DM added to my character's story. In this campaign I play a Water Genasi Warlock, Genie subclass, Ma Reed. Her backstory, far traveler, was basically, born on an island to human parents. Parents didn't like how she was a Genasi, so they left her at a beach very young. She was found by a Triton who became her adoptive father and raised her in the ocean. Ma Reed and the other genies are also very different in this campaign. I didn't know this until after we met this character, but DM created a Water Genasi pirate captain NPC, when the campaign started, who was a possible support to the party by helping them travel overseas with the captain's ship. But when I joined when the party was level 5, DM thought it'd be cool if these two were connected. It wasn't hard to change since we'd yet to meet this pirate captain. So when we met the Water Genasi captain, DM described him to look exactly like my character from eye color to skin tones, same smile, everything was the same apart from their genders. My warlock was female, and him being 12 years older. He was also a genie warlock under Ma Reed, so my warlock was very interested in why they looked so similar. Edit, want to add, this was both of their first times seeing another Water Genasi, so at first it wasn't too noticeable of how similar they were until more roleplay moments happened. It's hard to explain, but my warlock discovered they were twins when she got to see and talk to Ma Reed after getting to level 10. Ma Reed is basically the father of all Water Genasis that are born now, and Ma Reed became very impressed by the captain's abilities at such a young age that Ma Reed kinda just copy and paste the captain's genes but changed the gender to create my warlock. Which explained the age difference between them if they were twins, and they were also born from the same human parents. Easy. Players asked for a layout of the manor they have. I was tired when I made it and put a room with a description with a view of the sunrise when I meant sunset. The problem? It's in the western wing. So it blew my players' mind that the sun rose opposite. Hilarious because now they're asking if my gravity is different than 9.8 meters/S2. Years ago, when I decided to DM for the first time with new players, I rolled on a random encounter table online that involved a goblin, who was on fire, running down the trail. It was a joke encounter, but my players shockingly grabbed the goblin and put him out, and I had to scramble for a name, deciding on Naught. Naught was from a tribe terrorized by a troll, who lit goblins on fire for fun. Instead of going back to help his tribe, they just took Naught with them, and he became a beloved sidekick to the party. Now, years later, whether it's a game I'm running, or a game one of my friends from that same party runs, there is always a goblin whose name ends in Ort somewhere in the world. So far, the most prominent have been a player character, who died session 2 lol, and a powerful goblin mage who sold the party magic items. Can't wait to add an Ort to the next campaign I run. One of the races in my world flirts/courts primarily through dancing. Everyone knows how to dance extremely well, and visitors/outsiders who can't dance are looked on similar to if an adult did not understand the basics of sexual intercourse. People will recruit their friends to perform group dance routines when they ask someone out. Nobody catcalls, but people will often perform impromptu dance routines if they encounter someone they find attractive in an attempt to gain their attention. It often seems like a weird juxtaposition, as many of their other traits would be considered conservative. There was some human 1,000 to 2,000 years ago, Lucas Lang, who was instrumental in repelling a Gnoll invasion. Legends say he was buried with some unimaginable power, and a bunch of factions have been competing to unearth the artifact first. Turns out Lucas Lang had not, in fact, died, but had been interred by the gods in a mirror of life, trapping either for punishment or for preserving his life to be used by the gods later. Either way, he is pissed. Another bit of lore is that there is only a single dragon of each color. When one dies, it is reincarnated some years later. Dragons also produce a pearl that can be consumed to extend the natural life of someone by the same number of years that incarnation of the dragon had lived. In a Pugmire game I used an image of a dog photoshopped to look like Mr. T as a joke NPC. Later, I was using that image as a placeholder in a 5e game on Roll20 and accidentally showed it to my party as a full-size map, covering their entire screen, like a jump scare. Fast forward 2 years and not only is B.A. Barkus an actual talking dog that exists in my world, but the party's druid regularly wild shapes into him so he can benefit from B.A.'s +10 to intimidation. When orcs die in battle, they can challenge their god to one last battle in the post-life. So when an orc is getting old or sick, they seek for valorous warriors or fearsome monsters to battle them, so they can have more chances when fighting their god instead of being weak and frail in their battle. In the capital city of my homebrew setting, planar travel and really any sort of teleportation magic is outlawed. Massive runes are carved into the outer walls and make it impossible. Dimension Door and Misty Step don't even work. This is because the city exists in some form on every plane of existence. And when people used to use teleportation magic, sometimes things came through from other planes. For example, 2 of the city's extraplanar counterparts include the city of Brass and Asmodeus's palace. If you were to travel from one plane to another from the city, you appear in that exact spot on the other plane. So they had to restrict travel in order to protect the capital city. Only went a couple of sessions, but one of my favorites was Dink, Donk, and Dank. My friend was setting up a game to DM for the first time. He wanted to subvert the typical D&D trope of a party of heroes by making us roll up goblin villains. The idea was we'd attack caravans and menace towns, then hopefully escape, before a bunch of stupid do-gooders rock up to kill us all or something. Awesome idea. So, I rolled up Dink, the chosen one of the fathomless monster living in the pond of the cave that the goblin tribe/players all lived in. Self-important to a fault, Dink was supposed to be this arrogant little shit who thought that because he was the chosen of the monster who lived in a puddle in this tiny cave he was somehow a big deal, the obvious idea being, he'd get that kicked out of him pretty quickly. My friend liked the idea, and then approached me a few days later and asked to steal it. No problem, I said. So I created Donk, the cleric's sidekick brother to Dink, who had grown up playing second fiddle to Dink the entire time and virtually worshipping his brother as the greatest thing around. The idea here was that over time Donk would eventually come out of his brother's shadow and become his own person. When the session started, the DM started talking and I was amazed at how much depth he had added to a character that I had created as a gag. Instead of it being a simple puddle in a stupid cave, the fathomless monster was actually from an underground ocean of colossal size and mystery, and Dink was actually an honest-to-God warlock unparalleled power, which we were going to have to help him uncover and also rescue him from as we went along the adventure. We were also introduced to Dank, the third brother, who had the affectation of a hippie stoner. But there was something unique about Dank, and he would pull out spells that were a bit too powerful for the level that he was supposed to be. It was only after the campaign fell apart that my friend confided in me that Dank was supposed to be a manifestation of the fathomless monster, there to essentially watch over, guide, and ultimately corrupt Dink in order to grow his personal power. Jesus Christ is the God of expletives and swearing in my world. It is common practice to say his name in response to shocking events, because that's a habit I have and don't feel like breaking just to stay in character. I had a friend, who is an IRL Greek Orthodox priest, play a paladin devoted to our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ in one campaign. This was set in Foon, so naturally, no one in-game had a fucking clue what the dude was talking about. We had a lot of fun with that one. There's a guy named Na who is a toy for the gods. Every day he wakes up with no memories. He never ages, each god gets him from midnight to midnight to do whatever they want with him. He is unaware of his predicament. Not sure if this is intentional, but Na looks similar to the German word Narr, which means fool in English. It's a rather old word and I'd say rather uncommon today, except if you want to sound fancy. But the point is the name fits for this type of character cause the gods are making a fool out of him every day. Admittedly not the most out there, but there are several cities I've made where it's if not illegal at least heavily frowned upon to wear a red shirt. The reason being that red was traditionally only worn by soldiers BC blood, so it didn't show or stain, so a red shirt/outfit is seen as a sign that someone is expecting/looking for a hard fight, which is generally discouraged in most societies. There is a goose that is a completely ordinary goose in all respects, except if it is killed, it comes back an unspecified time later. It has bonded with one party member. The player pulled out a kazoo earl and started honking back at it. It got her inspiration and advantage on her animal handling check, and become feared by the rest. What the party doesn't know yet is that it's a special familiar summoned by an awakened goose mother, sent out into the universe to find other goose-related things of interest to her. The party member the goose bonded with had a great-grandfather that was a goose, but got true polymorphed into a Shadar Kai. The player does not know this yet but requested something goosey to be put in her character's history because she loved this goose so much. DM was explaining lore stuff about his homebrew setting. DM, the bigger a shadow is, the stronger its connection to the shadow plane. Me, so like, if there were a moon that orbited only once per year, always exactly opposite the sun, would it be just a massive portal to the shadow plane? DM? The planet has 2 moons now. Playing Curse of Strahd, my wife and I co-DM'd wrote an entire journal for St. Markovia to equal Strahd's journals. It detailed her arrival in the valley, her founding of the abbey, and the revolution, aligning her with the Weravens at the same time. We also did something similar with shorter journals for the wife, husband and nanny in Death House, detailing an affair and the illegitimacy of the child in the basement. This also detailed the creation of the cult surrounding the Dark Ones/Strahd. Tax the Lich. My group takes turns DMing, and over the years we have accumulated a number of things that just exist in every world we make, one of them being a tax-paying Lich who isn't evil. I gotta ask, if your Lich pays taxes, who or what does its bookkeeping and accounting? Using various undead as a labor force is pretty straightforward, but I can't think of an undead with sufficient intelligence to do all the financial reporting that would also be completely under the thrall of said Lich. I have yet to use it in my Spelljammer campaign, but all plasmoids are genderless but choose to look like hot slime girls cause they realize that all other species treat them better cause they look hot. In my most recent campaign all the older women sounded like Roz from Monsters Incorporated. So, the great old ones are sleeping ancient beings older than the gods. As long as at least one of them is asleep, the universe exists, but if all of them awaken, reality will cease to exist. Because the universe is their dreamscape. That's pretty normal lore. But I twist it up. Let's look at the details of the great old ones. Older than the universe and its gods. All of reality exists in their minds. Have strange reality warping powers. Can give powers to individuals in said universe. This seems familiar, it's almost like the players fit the exact description of a great old one. Just imagine if someone told you you're the avatar of a being whose mind contains and controls all reality. You see that desk over there? It just started to exist, but it's always been there because they decided so. Every bad thing that happened in your past, they decided would happen. They are the true master of your misery. And why don't you feel resentment? Because they don't want you to. They control all your thoughts and emotions. And all of reality is built around you. Yeah, the great old ones are my players and me. The final boss of the third campaign of our home game was a giant eye that was known as the Companion. It presented itself as a shooting star, and the entire world was enamored by it as if it were their god. By the time we defeated it, we later discovered that this eye was actually one of the eyes of the world that we were on, and that the world was actually a planet-sized titan whose very blood was the source of all arcane magic to have ever been used, and that the sun that's been a source of life on all who inhabit it is the Eldar of many titan planets in its system. Alright, here's an interesting one of my players, I'll call him Rutrian, from a campaign I'd done a long time ago, had a mole called Big Mark, which we never really got an explanation as to why the name was this, but it stuck, so we just rolled with it. The whole game goes on and on for a few months, and the campaign sadly ended due to one of our members having to go away, and out of respect we hit pause on the campaign, which is never going to get unpaused. Now, Rutrian and I wanted to play some more. So we started another campaign, and in this campaign he also had a mole, which he named Maya. However, I couldn't let the legacy of Big Mark die, so I made him into an NPC, but here's the catch. All of my players, besides Rutrian, decided to only use ranged weapons. So I created a little fact inside of my world's lore and made so that melee weapons were illegal in most cities. However, there is an wandering merchant called Big Mark, which is one of the few that sells melee weapons and specializes in selling bludgeon weapons. TLDR, my friend had a mole named Big Mark. The campaign ended and I turned Big Mark into an NPC that sells bludgeon weapons.
Hey adventurers and fellow Redditors, are you tired of hearing the same old battle music during your D&D sessions, or just looking for the perfect soundtrack for your next epic quest? Well, let me introduce you to Amazon Music Unlimited. With Amazon Music Unlimited, you get access to over 100 million songs, ad-free. That means whether you need an intense combat playlist, relaxing tunes for a tavern scene, or just something to vibe to while scrolling Reddit, we've got you covered. And it's not just about music, there are thousands of podcasts too. So if you need a break between campaigns, you can catch up on your favorite shows. Plus, there's the best part. If you sign up today, you can try it free for 30 days. No commitment, no hassle, just endless music and podcasts tailored to your taste. So whether you're crafting your next D&D campaign, painting minis, or just chilling with your party, make your soundtrack legendary with Amazon Music Unlimited. Hit the link below and start your free trial now, because every adventure needs a killer soundtrack.
I like my world's astronomy. There is the day, the storm, and the night. The storm isn't a literal storm, it's a giant ball of roiling orange, yellow, and white clouds that rise around late afternoon and set somewhere in the night. The world is a moon orbiting a gas giant. I often refer to things as happening at storm rise or storm set. Besides that, it has no bearing on the plot. Although now I have a cleric of the storm, since there are no true gods, and one of the characters believes the storm is up to something. More of an event than a piece of lore, but the time the god of creation visited the party by stepping out of the bathroom on a steel dragon, then left by flushing himself. Why there was a bathroom on a living, breathing dragon is beyond me. much less why the god of creation chose to use it for his entrance and exit. My setting was a country in peace for over 70 years, suddenly hit by a multitude of calamities, setting the stage for multiple powder keg situations. During a spying operation on the Bevelian capital, my players found out many secrets, and one detail I kept hammering on: the king's son was shady and had a tick to bite the tip of his thumb with his canine tooth when in deep thought or excited. 2 years and 30-ish sessions later, they are on the opposing kingdom of Atomos, doing a completely different thing, trying to prove that a killing flying machine going around are the Fae's fault, enslaving their dwarven neighbors. The players had pursued a lead for a long time, and now they had what their characters had identified to be a time portal recording device. With this, they could visually prove what they saw at the time of using the item: an Eladrin captain, enslaving the dwarves to build the machine in their mines near the Elven Woad. That Eladrin's notes had revealed everything. She had, after many years, attuned to the deepest functions of the magical device, allowing her to steal blueprints from the future using this very time recording function, but from the resulting war that would wrongly happen because of Atomos' wrong decision to fight Bevel. It was not the technologically advanced Bevelians, but a corporate time-spying Fae that was stealing blueprints from the future Bevelian capital under the pressure of war. This way, the Fae could rule over the continent with bountiful nature again. You don't need to start a huge war over this. Just send some adventurers, like us, to beat the machine and that evil Fae and free the dwarves as well. My players told the Atomos Council. One of the council members, a dear old lady friend to the players on multiple occasions, getting stabbed in the back in the middle of the meeting by one of the other council members. It was the Eladrin in disguise. You and your adventurers have screwed everything. The entire Feywild will come for you. We will curse your children, and your children's children forevermore. As creatures spew out portals and some other council members die, amidst the chaos, the Eladrin enters a portal and spouts, "Tomorrow I will bring more. And the day after. Until you come to the Woad. So we can fertilize the woods with your mortal blood." My player, with the observant feet, notices from the corners of their eyes, the Eladrin captain leaving. A sick smile on her face. Her thumb being bitten under her canine. Also, the magic item was just a normal camera. Bevel invented the first camera. The diary was a lie. The flying machine is basically just a zeppelin with magical cloth and flamethrowers and cannons underneath. Bevel is really that advanced. They will let Atomos attack the Woad, killing the elves and Fae, then crush what remains without moving a single platoon. As for funny lore details, I added a magic stove to a family of gnome innkeepers. The magic stove causes a mind-affecting illusion effect. By eating the food you forfeit any will saves/immunities. The effect of the magic food was to cause a forgotten pleasant memory to resurface. If it was a seasonal or race-based dish, the memory is associated with that race or season. I charged 10 gold per meal for the magic food. This allows NPCs to occasionally splurge on the magic food but be too expensive for an everyday meal. When players eat the food, I ask them to describe the memory so the players can ad-lib some cool RP. The person eating the magic food experiences the full memory as a trance-like illusion that covers all 5 senses. This minor magic stove was a great plot tool, as I allowed the food to reveal random memories of characters that had amnesia or mind control or other things that would normally block access to their own memories. In Curse of Strahd, the party encountered a ranger who was actually from Scotland and somehow ended up in Barovia. He was a ghost and was having trouble finding a true resting place, although the party didn't know that, although they surmised he was some sort of spirit. He was actually just a portrayal of my best friend who passed away some years ago, and he was helpful to the party. Sheltered them for the night, shared a story, which was a true story with names and places changed, and mysteriously vanished in the morning before the party woke. They still wonder about him to this day. I never told them who he really was. I have one NPC, Professor Althea Silversea, who has appeared in all 3 of my campaigns to date. She's a red-haired high elf with a streak of grey-white hair down one side, a little like Loz's hair in DOS 2, who is generally quite a helpful person, but has a ruthless edge when it comes to gaining more magical power. In-game chronologically, first campaign, she's a new teacher, having just graduated from school, who is referred to the party as a potential point of contact should they visit her area. In the second, she's a professor who gives the party access to their new mentor, and also helps them investigate some spooky stuff going on in the necromancy department. And in the third campaign, hundreds of years later, she's reached the status of Archmage and appears as one of the faction leaders of an expedition, and the party decided that they wanted to make her their beg. The campaign ended before they fought her, though, so there's still a chance that she can appear in yet another story. One of my players was doing an odd accent for his character. I introduced his character's cousin, and mimicked the accent perfectly. The players broke up laughing for a good 5 minutes. Felt good, man. XD. I envy your talent lol. I try to do accents and they always end up slipping into absolute nonsense. Most of my accents are pretty offensive. Especially my Indian one. Which is one of the ones I can do more fluidly, but it's defos not something I do around people other than the DND group. I do a decent German one. But when I do accents I also seem to take on a character. And my German voice is a Nazi. I do a very good Eastern European accent and I don't think it comes across as offensive. I've managed to use it so much that it doesn't come with a character anymore, but it did used to be some kind of mafiosa or otherwise ruffian. I do a passable Irish apparently according to friends, but he can only refer to people as Jim. Or of their Welsh limb. But again I think most Irish people would consider it in poor taste if not outright funny. And finally my American accent. I can't quite pin it down. Sometimes it morphs into something else. But it seems to slip between a thick southern drawl, Paulie, your normal Yankee Doodle accent and God-fearing, Bible-thumping, racist, anti-abortion, Trump-loving accent. Needs a lot more work and control. I'm pretty proud of some of my homebrewed gods. Ardma is a god of love, friendship and family, represented by the image of a turtle. He favors lifelong bonds, marriages, camaraderie, and children at play. There's an in-universe holiday dedicated to him which basically works like Christmas, exchanging gifts with the ones you love in late winter. Orkar is a dark god with the ability to assimilate power from other gods. He tried this on a great war god and lost the resulting fight. His severed hand fell to the land below and rotted into the first goblins. Using the essence of Orkar, goblins can, over hundreds of generations, assimilate bits and pieces of DNA from humanoids they consume, causing them to mutate and evolve. This is where creatures like hobgoblins, orcs and bugbears come from. Oh, and I run dragons a little funky. Metallics reproduce conventionally. But chromatics have no interest in that under normal circumstances. They feel no romantic affection or sex drive. However, because chromatic dragon DNA is kinda screwy, when they do lay eggs most of the eggs will be born not as wimlings, but as drakes, less intelligent and powerful than full dragons. Dragons can control drakes via mind control, similarly to the alphas from HID. As such, chromatics will mate for practical purposes. A male and female chromatic will make a pact to make some babies, and each will take half to use as henchmen to guard their lairs. After that, they go their separate ways. A small percentage of the drakes are actually born as proper wimlings, with free will. If either parent discovers a wormling in their clutch, they would theoretically kill it to prevent future competition, but the wimlings are born with the instinct to pose as drakes until they can sneak away and start their own lair elsewhere. so the chromatics keep up a steady population almost in spite of themselves. In my early years of DMing, when a player went out of their way to talk to an NPC I had no notes about, I often had to make up a name. Usually a simple one like Brad or Sarah. Kyle was used once, then again. Then the players pointed out, "Oh, another Kyle, ha." The third time. It was funny, so if I was struggling for a name I'd default to Kyle. Fast forward to the end of the campaign, their elven wizard patron named Kaiser, who hired the party to collect all powerful artifacts they got to keep, improved instant summons spell that would let him yoink it from their persons later, so he can use them to forge the MacGuffin. The players successfully track him down just before the MacGuffin is made, thanks to one player successfully rolling to just be brought with the instant summoned artifact rather than try to prevent it, and thus the party wizard teleporting everyone to them, and the "oh man." After years of really heavy story, our Beg wound up being a mentally tortured victim of a constant battle with the gods. All of the horrible things she was doing to the world were just her madness seeping out and attacking anything it could. We went to what we thought was her fortress for the fight of our lives, only to wind up choosing to help her / put her out of her misery. Absolutely mind-bending. The story had us chasing a lead on a missing person that took us to an underground puppet show where the puppets were corpses. It's important to note this game was taking place in a fictional version of the small town in which we all lived. My character was a dropout of the Northeast Iowa Community College of the Arcane Arts and Sciences. I miss him. Anyway, worrying about our missing person, we did a perception check on the 3 deceased puppets. The DM then described, in great detail, the 3 players sitting around the table. Still one of my favorite things to happen in a TTRPG ever. Maybe not the craziest, but one of the gods in my pantheon is the god of tricksters and liars, because he managed to deal his way into divinity. There is now a written agreement amongst the gods that if anyone tries anything like that again, they just kill them. It's known as the Larnian Agreement, and Larnian himself is quite pleased he was able to cause such a stir. I have a continent called Valorwern. It's where a big battle against the 4 evil elemental titans was waged after they unleashed the Tarask. After they were killed, their gigantic bodies were inhabited by different races. Their decaying bodies have given these races abilities similar to bending. Where the bodies touch, it creates paralemental benders as well, so we have smoke, ice, ooze, etc. benders as well. In high school, a friend was messing with his lighter during a game and ended up burning off a corner of his character sheet. Well, I just decided that his god was going to teach him a lesson, and so he got a huge burn and scar, and I think some sort of charisma or skill penalty. From that incident on, we decided that any damage to the character sheet would be reflected on the character. The culmination of my years-long campaign was a reveal that the entire material plane the characters were on had been constructed by a group of archmages as an immense magic circle to keep a reality-ending calamity known as the End of Days imprisoned. When the plans of the Atraloth Lord Taba to force the plane into worship of the Yugoloths approached success, the clash between her and the Divine Guardians, the PCs, threatened to release the End of Days, and she had to stop what she was doing in order to return the circle to its full strength before the creature broke out and wiped out the multiverse. This revelation came on the heels of the reveal that, in order to prevent any amount of belief in and fear of End of Days by the mortal population, which would give the End of Days power, like worshipping a god does, the entire world is reset every 400 years, with all memories and writings erased entirely. People and buildings stay. So it's obvious that the world existed prior to the wipe, but nobody remembers anything from before the current one. We have a mega corporation called the General Store, and, no matter what one you went to, it was always staffed by the same late teen. Originally it was thought to be a Nurse Joy / Officer Jenny situation, but it turns out the megacorp gave him a teleporter that'll take him to any branch that has a customer inside or the warehouse dimension. In other words, he's their only employee and they have a branch in every town and city. Elves are marsupials. It started as a joke within one friend group, but as we've all drifted apart, I still use it. In some games, elves are actually marsupials, but very insecure/secretive about it. In other games, elves are very much not marsupials, but the conspiracy theory persists. In a current game I'm playing a changeling who at some point was told this, but has never seen it, and they are very upset that they can never the pouch right when shifting into an elf. I play in a campaign with a cursed book that always comes back to its owner. Actually, that was from an old 1E campaign the DM played with the first player years ago. The current game, an old friend of the DM and first player joined, and the first thing he says is, "Oh, I have something for you," and give the other player the book he was cursed with in the game he played 20 years prior. Same campaign world, first player was playing the nephew of his original character. During the course of this game, the two players stopped getting along and the newer player left the game, and we also learned the history of the book. It ties to the owner's ancestry, so always stays with the descendant of its original owner. I realized it meant the two characters were related, so get to tease the other player over it endlessly since it's a focus of our campaign. I'm running Curse of Strahd for my players, and they were being chased by the town guard. Their friend, Vasily von Holst, who is definitely not Strahd in disguise, pulled them into a dark alleyway just before the guards turned the corner. Vasily said he'd help them get to their destination on the other side of town because he wouldn't let good friends fall to the hands of a corrupt system, but, in doing so, he'd have to miss the opening night of Twilight, New Moon. Favorite bit: gnolls kill and eat the dead after combat because they believe the souls of the devoured will serve them in the afterlife. So if a gnoll thinks you're strong, they flirt with you by earnestly attempting to kill you. Funny bit: this came from a typo in our Discord. Adventurers who die on missions or in debt to the guild become revenuants, essentially undead tax collectors in service to the guild. They can be summoned with special coins/medallions, and always know where their targets are. The first part of the adventure was in a city that looked like it was extremely wealthy, upper class. All the buildings had expensive artwork/everything just felt fancy. Eventually it was realized that the entire upper-class district city was under a mass illusion spell to hide number 1, some cult shenanigans, number 2, just how cheap everything really was as they diverted funds elsewhere. The party member who was a noble background suddenly found out that all his fancy clothes/furniture etc. were actually cheap stuff that was actually worth less than some commoners, and his estate had all the expensive stuff swapped by the cult.
Hey there, fantasy fans. If you're looking for an epic listen, you have to check out Rosamund Pike's narration of the Wheel of Time audiobook. Rosamund Pike brings so much life to Robert Jordan's world. Her performance adds an extra layer of depth to the characters, making the story even more immersive. Whether it's her portrayal of the fearless Aes Sedai or the intense magical battles, she nails it. It's like experiencing the Wheel of Time in a whole new way. And here's the best part. You can get it for free with Audible's 30-day trial of Audible Plus. You'll get access to this incredible audiobook and more, completely free for a month. So if you're ready to dive into this massive fantasy world, this is the perfect way to start. Don't miss out. Check the link below and start your journey today. 100% free for qualifying people. Completely free. Click the link.